Content warning for this episode. It does discuss mental health themes and suicide ideation. So if that's not for you, skip forward. Two Girls, One Pod, Thursday edition, which means there are actually two girls and the one pod. I'm Yvie Jones, and today we have a wonderful guest who's become a dear friend of mine. Her name is Dr Yumiko Kadota. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so honoured to be girl number 2 today.
I love that you know what, you can be girl number 1.
No.
I'm taking number 2, okay?
All right.
You're the guest and you're up there.
Amazing.
Let me tell you about Dr Yumiko. She's a cosmetic doctor. Is the cosmetic surgeon?
No, I have to clarify that because now there's so many things around that. So I do the medicine side of things.
You're the plastic
I
surgeon.
used to do, or I wanted to be a plastic surgeon. So I did some years in the public hospital system training to be that. But I had to change. I completely burnt out. And now I do cosmetic medicine, which is more like bobo and fillers, the non-surgical side. So cutting things.
Okay. Except for carrots at home.
Yes.
For dinner.
Love a good carrot.
You have a medical degree from Uni New South Wales.
I do.
Where you graduated with honours. Congratulations. Your parents must be very proud. You specialise in cosmetic injectables, as you just said, and radio frequency skin treatments. Sounds scary. It's not scary. You also have 12 years of clinical experience, including as a surgical registrar in plastic and reconstructive surgery. Okay, let's go back to...
I feel like this is a job interview, Yvie.
No, it's not. Welcome. I love you.
I love you too. I love it.
Tell me about your burnout. Why did you change because of burnout? It's a real thing, isn't it?
It is such a thing, and a lot of people don't recognize it until it's too late, especially if you're a bit like me and you're a people pleaser and you just don't really think about what's happening to you because you're more concerned about performing for other people. And so I worked in the hospital system for 8 years and I was very much used to high-level stress, going to address, various emergencies on the wards or in the emergency department. That was just my life and I was happy doing that. But,
do you see people around you falling down, like as far as stress goes and that?
Oh, yeah. It's a very stressful environment and you can see it in other people, but people just don't want to talk about it because there's such a huge taboo about mental health, which is so ironic because we work in healthcare.
Yes.
And we're there to look after other people who are sick or injured, but when it comes to our own health, it's like, no, we don't
not
talk
allowed.
about that. Yeah. It's like a sign of weakness if you talk about your mental health or even your physical health. And a lot of people keep it to themselves. A lot of people can't even talk about their personal things. Like there's a lot of homophobia, for example.
Really?
So I have had a lot of gay doctors, friends who couldn't really tell their colleagues that, or one felt like he couldn't go to his convocation, which is like the ceremony when you finish your specialty, with his partner because he didn't want to be seen, gay couple at a ceremony in a medical
So there
world.
seems to be, which is such a theme on this particular podcast.
Yes.
And with medicine, it's, been only allowing women in it for a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Women could study, but they couldn't perform. So the patriarchal structure is so heavy in medicine, still to this day, that there is a homophobia in it. So there must be a misogyny that's very, very strong.
Because they're so closely related. Queerphobia and misogyny.
The worst thing you can be is a woman. To so many men. And the patriarchal structure of something. Once upon a time, surgeons believed that their hands were the hands of God and they didn't. They were offended to have to wash them because, and that's what there was. They were going from cadavers to births and not washing their hands in between and being offended if anyone asked them to do so. And there was a lot of deaths that way. That's obviously changed, but a lot of things haven't.
Yeah. And I just realized I completely didn't answer your question about burnout.
No, we're getting there. I love that we're talking about this and giving it some context.
Yes, and it's all relevant because when we think about burnout, it's not just about working, it's also at the emotional aspect of burnout as well. So there's that strain of being in a workplace where you're not feeling valued or appreciated, and all of these unconscious biases can contribute to the idea of burnout. So it is relevant when we talk about things like experiencing homophobia or sexism in the workplace, because those are all going to add to your sense of feeling good about what you're doing at work. Because I think when people think about burnout, they think, oh, you're just tired. But it's so much more than that. Because you start questioning things like, what am I doing? Am I good at what I'm doing? Your sense of purpose. There's all these other aspects to it that we don't always discuss, because it's much easier to talk about kind of physical tiredness. Yes. And there's so much more to it than that. So,
well, you can lie down and have sleep and your body can, recharge, but if your mind is not doing that, or literally your brain and your mind are two very different things, aren't they? A lot of people don't really get that, your brain is more your physical and your mind is more, well, obviously your mental.
Yeah.
And if they don't work well together, then they're not going to serve you.
And I think that the emotional well-being is so important at work, how you're being treated, not just your colleagues as well, but if you're working in a hospital, how patients are treating you as well. So there's a lot of that going on, and you do carry a lot when you work in a hospital, because obviously they're not happy to be there because they're either sick or they're injured. And if you're an empathetic person, which ideally you should be if you're working in a hospital, you carry that weight as well. So there's also that kind of emotional tiredness from always empathizing with other people's problems, not just your own as well. So you carry a lot. It's quite heavy sometimes, and we do see really awful traffic accidents or
I don't know how you deal with that trauma.
Or childhood cancer.
Oh my God.
There are lots of devastating things that you see. And so when you don't get the opportunity to debrief with someone or talk about it, it's really hard. And sometimes workplaces don't always acknowledge that we are human and we're affected by the things that we see each day. And that can lend itself to burnout as well, which we don't really talk about because it's easier for hospitals to just look at physical, tangible things like you are rostered on for this day to this day, numbers,
work well.
Yeah, without considering the kind of day-to-day interpersonal dynamics that might contribute to you feeling burnt out. But in my situation, I was actually working way too much. So,
you were doing double shifts.
Yeah, well, a bit more than that. I was running a plastic surgery unit with just one other person, and instead of dividing it 50-50, I was doing 10 out of 14 on-call shifts every fortnight. So it wasn't equally divided, and I was the more junior registrar, so I was given more of the load. But what people don't always know is that even if you're not physically at the hospital, if you're on call for 24 hours, you can get rung at any time. So even after a long day at work, you go home, you're still receiving phone calls. And sometimes I was getting calls every hour past midnight and expected to just go to work the next day and perform at my highest level. And
you can't have a drink either, can you?
No. I mean, I'm not much of a drinker anyway, but you can't. If you're always on standby, you always have to be ready. And so when your body's always on standby, you just can't relax.
Well, it would be it's like that flight or fight feeling.
Absolutely.
So it's on.
I'm always on.
Your adrenal glands. What is it? Adrenals would be.
Yeah, definitely. You're always on adrenaline. And so part of what happened to me was because I was always on, I just couldn't sleep. I had insomnia for 18 months after I quit, and I just couldn't sleep. And I'm not surprised because my brain was so wired. It was always switched on, ready for the next emergency or potential emergency. And sometimes people will say cheeky things like, oh, well, what's the big deal? You get called at 3 a.m., you just roll over, go back to sleep. But I don't know. I don't know how many people can get their sleep interrupted and then have a good night's sleep after that. And
my bladder wakes me up at 3 in the morning. I can't get back to sleep. And it is not mean. I mean, it is not an emergency. Well, it is an emergency. I've got to wee.
Yeah,
but
don't want to wee yourself.
Not easy to get back to sleep for any wake.
Well, speaking of weeing yourself, I actually shat myself. That's how unwell I got towards the end. I was just driving to work And I was like, oh, that doesn't feel right. It feels a bit warm and moist. So I had to pull over, and I'd actually had like fecal incontinence on the way to work.
Oh my God.
And that's when I knew like I'm not well.
Something's wrong.
Yeah. And for me, like I've always been able to keep going. And so mentally I can keep going. But that was the first physical sign that something was up. And until that happened, I probably wouldn't have stopped. I would have kept going. But anyway, I was the only one looking after the unit that day. So I just threw my pants and it was really nice laundry as well. I just chucked it to the side of the road. I feel sorry for anyone who was going for a nice walk with their dog. And I just...
Oh, the dog would have loved it. Person, not so much.
Oh, yeah. Person, definitely not. But, yeah, I just went to work commando that day and just kept going. Yeah.
So from that moment, you knew something's going on. How long after that did you actually take...
Oh, I kept going after that for a few more months before I officially resigned because obviously...
You got to tie things up. You got to let people know.
And also it's a big decision to make when that's all I ever thought I would do with my life. I'd, studied for 6 years and that was my 8th year of working in the hospital. And I was 30 at the time, so 14 years out of that, that's like half my entire life committed to doing something. So for me to give it up, I was scared because I had no plan B. Like, what am I going to do if I quit? And if you quit a job, it's seen as a very unprofessional thing to do. So I knew that I would be blacklisted in New South Wales Health and maybe I won't get another job again. So there was a lot of things for me to consider before doing that.
Had you seen other people do it?
No, it's very rare for people to quit.
So there was no one for you to go to and say, I'm thinking of doing what you did. Can we have a chat? Can you give me some advice or some kind of empathy of it? How did you handle it? There wasn't anyone to talk to.
I didn't see anyone who did it who people spoke well of. And that's the problem. When people leave...
They don't speak well of them.
Yeah, they're like, oh, they couldn't handle it or they weren't never meant to be a doctor. Or people will say stuff because it's so much easier to blame the individual than look at the potential systemic factors that might have driven them to leave. So I knew that I would be bad-mouthed if I were to leave. People say, oh, yeah, she couldn't handle it. She was weak. She couldn't cope with the stress. I knew that. And people did say a lot of those things afterwards, and I knew they would. So there were just so many things for me to think about before officially resigning. But at the end, I just physically couldn't keep going. Wasn't sleeping, struggling a lot. And even though I had raised it with my, I guess you would call them your manager or the first person up. So for me, it was my head of unit and people in HR. I did the right things. I went through the right channels to try and say, look, I'm not able to cope with this workload. It was just way too much. And it takes a lot for anyone, especially a junior doctor, to even say that. So for me to ask for help was a big deal. And then to not have anything addressed, I was just like, this is not going to work. And the night before I quit, I got a roster for the following couple of months and I would be working even more hours. So I'm like, okay, well, things are actually going to get worse rather than better. So
that was a sign almost?
That was a sign. The next morning, I rang HR and I said, how many weeks' notice do you need? And they said 4 weeks. I said, okay, I'm going to send you an email with my 4-week notice. And that was it.
So in that 4 weeks, were you preparing for your life after? During that, while trying to work at the same time, while being judged by everyone around you that worked, knowing that you had resigned and that they started looking at you as a weak person.
Yeah, I was so desperate to find my backup. Yeah. And I did sit a couple of interviews for other medical jobs. Yeah. But in the end, I got so unwell that I actually couldn't work. And I didn't think I would ever spend a year of not working, but I needed to look after my mental health first because if you're unwell, there's just no way you could perform. And I tried to get back into it as soon as possible, but then I actually, because I didn't allow myself to recover or rest or get the help I needed, I actually got more unwell and ended up in the hospital for 6 weeks.
Right.
So
with mental health or with physical?
So I was diagnosed with depression at the time, and now I have actually been diagnosed with complex PTSD.
Yes.
And depression can be a part of that.
Yes.
But I guess because they were dealing with what was happening at the time, that was the appropriate diagnosis. And the antidepressants did help me that I was on. Eventually, we found the right ones,
Yes.
but it took 18 months to find the one that would help me sleep.
Yes.
Because I've tried all these different ones and some help with my mood and all of this. But for me, it was just the sleep. That was the biggest
you needed to
thing.
sleep.
So now I prioritize sleep. That is one of the most important things.
Good, because I do as well.
Yeah.
I used to be laughed at by how much I would prioritize my sleep. But now everyone understands me now. They're like, I know not to contact you after 8 p.m. at night. Actually, it could be about 7 p.m. I just don't answer calls. I don't do anything after.
Do you put do not disturb on? Yeah, same.
Yeah. I see the messages there. I do not reply to them.
Yeah.
I'm like, I do it all in the morning. I saw yours last night.
Yeah.
You arrive in Melbourne. I was like, it would be so easy just because I was up.
Yeah.
And to reply to that. But I was like, no, because that's going to start a dialogue that
Yes,
I will stay
exactly.
awake for.
Yeah.
And I know how important it is because I'm in my reading to go to sleep time.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about the 6 weeks in hospital?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Was it public or private?
It was private.
Okay.
Yes.
So you paid for it like in a gap or, was that part of your
it was
private
covered.
insurance?
Yeah, so it didn't really cost me anything out of pocket. Okay. So, and that is actually one of the criticisms that I've received about my book. So I wrote a book called Emotional Female about all of this, and even though I did try really hard to acknowledge my privilege, I did get told, oh, you don't acknowledge it enough. And sometimes you can't win even though you try so hard to acknowledge all of your privileges. But I am privileged. I did have private health insurance. It was covered. And I know that it's so hard to get mental health help in Australia. I know that. And I was very, very lucky that I had access to it.
Yeah.
And also as a doctor as well, my psychiatrist bulk billed me.
Yes.
And I know it's so expensive to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist in Australia. But there is, I guess, this kind of unsaid thing within the medical profession that if a fellow health professional gets sick, that you would help them out.
That's good. Well,
yeah,
it would almost be like a Hippocratic oath of sorts.
It's just kind of looking after your own kind of thing. I mean, not everyone does it. I mean, I've seen an endocrinologist, a gynecologist who charge me full price, which is fine. They're entitled to. But, I've got a beautiful GP who I've known for such a long time. And even though I insist on paying her, she'll always just put it on the bulk bill. Okay, so I have been really, really lucky that it hasn't cost me. Well, I mean, there's a lot of emotional cost, but in terms of money, I was really able to get a lot of the help that I needed at the time, which not everyone would be able to do. Not everyone can take time off work.
Well, no, that's right. Or
get access to
have
treatment.
a private hospital.
Yeah.
As far as public hospitals go, would you have been able to do that on a public system?
There is definitely psychiatric units in the public system as well. So you would present usually through the emergency system, and then they'll assess you. So it's usually more for if you're acutely unwell.
Yes.
So if someone, presents with suicidal ideation or having an acute psychotic episode or something like that and presents to the emergency department, they will get assessed. And if they are seen as requiring an inpatient admission, then they would then be admitted into the hospital. So you have to go through that kind of triage system where someone determines whether you're unwell enough to come into the hospital.
Whereas a private, you can admit yourself.
It's a little bit more elective in that way.
Yes.
I actually didn't want to go to hospital. I was just like, no, I'm fine. But it was my psychiatrist who was like, no, I don't think you're okay. And it took me a whole week to then absorb what she had said and accept that I actually did need to go into the hospital. But I eventually did surrender and said, you know what, I'm ready for somebody else to look after me for once, because I'd spent my whole life thinking I would heal others or help others. So that was a personal challenge for me to let somebody else look after me. And also I'm a massive control freak, so I don't like other people doing things for me. So
which would be so many of us.
Yeah.
So I think that's really inspiring, this story of yours, and you just mentioned, I was going to say, you can read all about this and see this in depth more in your book Emotional Female, which I haven't read. I'm really, really sorry.
Oh no, don't be. I'll bring you a copy next time I see
please,
you.
Because I've been wanting to read it for such a long time. I've been following you for such a long time, and it's something that I keep going, oh God, I wish I just had it. Like when I read at night, I just pull my books from above. I've got a bookshelf above me and I just pull my book down that I'm reading at the moment. And I always think, oh, I've got to, and I like to go into shops and buy books rather than order them online.
Right,
So because I like the smell and like the chat with people.
Yes, me too. I love a physical book.
Otherwise, when I think about it, I would have just ordered it to send it to me.
Do you listen to audiobooks much?
No.
I've had a few friends tell me that
I try.
It's helped them go to sleep at night. I'm like, does that mean it's boring?
So that's
my voice is quite soothing.
I don't want to do that. I want to read a book and I like to take it with me and I like to read it. And I tried audio and I've tried Kindle, which was great as well, but it just wasn't the same. I love that smell. I love books. I love books.
And for me, it's a attention thing as well. I get so easily distracted that I find audiobooks quite difficult.
Yes, me too. I think if I spent a lot more, I don't drive very often. So if I did, I would really be listening to podcasts and audiobooks. But, I don't. So I have to allocate that time without my phone. And because if I had my phone on me while I'm reading a book, which I've tried to do, just quickly look at my Instagram grid. Oh, quickly look at my scroll. And then I'm in. And then, it's TikTok. So
too many distractions.
Hard copy book is the best way to keep your phone on Do Not Disturb. No notifications.
You can't take your hands off.
Exactly. So when did you start writing that? While you were in hospital or?
I started blogging when I was in hospital. Do you remember the days where blogging
Yes, I used to have a blog. I used to remember Blogspot.
Yes,
it was a free.
Yes, I remember.
I had my own.
So
it was great.
While I was in hospital, we were allowed to bring in laptops and things. So I thought, I need something to do while I'm in there. Maybe I'll start writing. And so I had all of 11 subscribers. And so I decided to kind of document my experience. And then I didn't really tell anyone about the blog post, but then it would have been end of January sometime when the new year was starting for the doctors in the hospital system. And I thought maybe this might kind of resonate with somebody else. And so I posted it to my Facebook and tagged a whole bunch of colleges, the medical association, just to say, this is what happened to me last year. And just take care. It's the start of a new clinical year and it's okay to take time out if you need it. So I kind of put it out into the universe, not expecting too much from it because initially I'd written it in December sometime and not that many people read it. But then it got picked up and reshared and retweeted on Twitter. I didn't even have Twitter at the time. And a lot of people ended up reading it and ended up in the news. And that's how I ended up with a book deal. So, again, I have a lot of...
they approached you?
Yeah. So I sometimes get a bit of hate from the writing community because it is really hard to get a book published. And who is this random who wrote one blog post and gets a book deal out of it? Because it is really hard. You might spend years on a manuscript and submit it to various publishing houses and never get published.
Yeah, exactly.
And then this random who has no writing experience wrote a blog post and gets a book deal. So...
It seems there's a lot of haters going to hate. In a lot of these stories that you're telling. There's, people. You're always going to get hate for, not showing your privilege enough, not acknowledging your privilege enough, for writing a book when you're not a writer, or for being, having burnout. There's people going to hate all the time.
There's one going to be haters.
Theme running through all of this. That you just have to keep being and doing you.
Yeah, definitely, and just not to be distracted by other people. Or
dissuaded by haters.
And it is good to have some criticism. Yes. And I did take on board things like, acknowledging a bit more the fact that I had private health cover and all of that. So it was useful, some of the criticism, but you just have to filter out what's helpful and what's not.
Yeah, that's right. Constructive or destructive.
Yeah, otherwise you start questioning yourself and that can be an unhealthy spiral as well. So it's important to still maintain your self-confidence and believe that you're a good person and that you have genuine intentions with your life. So that can be difficult when you haven't been in the public eye before and all of a sudden all these people you don't know are criticizing you. And when it's a memoir, it's different to getting a 1-star review for a fiction book because it's about you. It's hard not to take it personally.
That's
but
right.
One of the criticisms I got from the medical community was, oh, she's just exaggerating. That doesn't happen. And of course they'll say
offensive.
And it's, you know, a lot of people will try and invalidate your experience if they've never experienced it before. Yep. Even women were a bit like, I don't know about that. But,
because
you
it's
know,
not happened.
Yeah.
It happens a lot, doesn't
but
it?
even recently, I was just at the gym and a surgeon walked up to me, and a woman, and she said, I get it. I get it now. She didn't get it at the time. This would have been about 4 years ago now when my story first came out. Mm-hmm. But now, you know, she is a very experienced surgeon and she got overlooked for a position for someone she trained, a lot more junior than her, who had some sort of personal connection with the head surgeon at her hospital. And she's like, I get it now. And it's fine, you know, sometimes you can't empathize with other people's experiences unless you've gone through it yourself.
That's right. But you can sympathise.
You can.
And that's the difference.
Yeah.
Is having sympathy for something that you may not have gone through.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you haven't received your empathy for that yet.
Exactly. Even things like the BLM movement, for example.
Exactly.
I will never know what it's like to live, you know, a life with black skin.
Yeah.
But I can support.
Yes.
And I can sympathise, like you
Yes.
say. I can't empathise. I can't be... I will never know exactly how it feels. But you're right. It would be more helpful if people can kind of open their eyes and ears a bit more and believe all of these stories rather than only believing it once it's happened to you, kind of thing. So... But it's been very validating since coming out with the story with people saying, oh, yeah, that's happened to me as well. But
and it will continue to as well.
Yeah, there have been a few other books published since mine about what it's like, especially for a woman in public health system. And it's, I think, given people a bit more courage to leave toxic workplaces or to speak up at work. It's still difficult, I believe, but it's making it a little bit easier. I mean, I don't think things have changed too much in the hospital system since I've left. And to answer your question, it took me about 2 years to write the book, and it was published about 2.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I still get messages now from people saying, oh, I finally read your book, because a lot of people put it on hold because they were burning out at the time and it felt too close to home.
Too triggering.
Yes, yeah. So a lot of doctors have avoided my book because they were like, no, just going through that right now. Cannot read it. Yeah.
Well, that would be their own PTSD.
Yeah.
Reading someone else's PTSD story would be really difficult to do. I don't know how anyone would do it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to read about other people. No. I often avoid books that are too heavily about mental health because I know that it'll be too close to me.
Yes. Yeah. Now, you grew up in Japan.
No,
I'm so sorry.
No, that's all right. I'm Japanese. But I left when I was a 3-month-old baby.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll give you my timeline.
Yes, please.
Because it's a bit complicated. I've been to lots of different places. But I am Japanese. Both parents are Japanese. Left when I was a 3-month-old baby. We moved to the Philippines for a couple of years where my sister Eriko was born. And then we moved again. But I mainly grew up in Singapore. I was there for 12 years. So a lot of people think I've got a bit of like an international accent. It's not quite Aussie. Sometimes you'll hear a few twangs of like British, Singaporean, Japanese, a bit of everything. So I went to an international school.
Schools give you the weirdest accents.
I know, I do have a
like you've got all the kids around you with their own accents. You've got the teachers giving you different accents. You've got family at home giving you their accents. So you all have these mishmash accents. Every friend I have who went to an international school has a similar but different accent to you.
And we all grew up watching American TV shows and MTV. So when I was living in Singapore, I had kind of an American accent when I was speaking with my friends at school. Yeah. But then, so in Singapore was where my younger sister Mariko was born. So there's 3 of us. And then we moved to the UK. So I was there for year 9 and 10. So again, very short time, and then my accent became a little bit more British while I was there. And then I moved to Australia when I was 15, and now I'm 36. So I've been here for a long time.
Now, what did your parents do?
Yeah, so my father, he's kind of semi-retired now, but he worked in for different banks and moved around a lot.
Right, so that was the moving.
Yeah, so we all moved as a family with him. And
what about your mum?
She didn't work. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Stay at home?
Very typical.
So she worked.
Oh, yeah.
Although there's a lot of help in Singapore.
There is, and in the Philippines as well.
So she had a good life? Has a good life?
I would like to think that she had a good life, but I think we were hard work, my sisters and I. But yeah.
But I mean, you've become a doctor. What have your sisters become?
Well, I think my parents are pretty lucky. We all did pretty well. So my other two sisters, they both got law degrees as well. And my middle sister is a practicing solicitor. And my younger sister, she's got a law degree but didn't end up being a lawyer. But she works in, I don't actually know exactly what she does, but kind of...
something.
I mean, I kind of know what she does, but... Yeah.
Your parents must be really proud of the three of you.
Well, you'd think so, but
I hope so.
Asian parents don't tell you.
That's right.
And
it's not just Asian parents.
Yeah.
There's a few parents. I'm just watching David Beckham at the moment and on Netflix, and his dad never told him. And he even says it on camera. If I told him how good he was, what would he strive for?
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much we need to be told. So it's not, but it's a cliched Asian thing.
It is such an Asian
but
thing.
But it is so real,
and you can always do better as an Asian child. There's never, you've never made it. You know, you can always do better. And they've never said the words that they were proud of us. But they'll come to things like graduation ceremonies.
They're there, they turn up.
They're present, you know, and that's their way of saying, I'm here for you.
There's all different ways
and
of
you've
showing
done well.
Pride.
Oh, yeah.
And that happens to be one of them.
Yeah, but it's...
And they're doing that.
Which is so funny because I've written a book called Emotional Female, and I'm very, very affectionate, and then I've got these very, very Asian parents who might just give me a little pat on the head, you know, and they're just not affectionate at all.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, so I don't know where I got all of my affection from.
Yeah,
but
well, you needed it, so you developed it.
Maybe I overcompensated for not getting any affection.
I think so. And you grew up in in countries that, well, once you got to England and then the UK, where, England and then Australia, you had people around you that were completely affectionate and had grown up with affection, so you probably started to gravitate.
I think so. And it's funny because when we were living in Singapore, my little sister Mariko's best friend was British, and her mum used to call her honey. So my sister went home and said to my mum, why don't you call me honey? And so my mum was like, oh, would you like to be called honey? So she started calling my little sister honey, but like in this Japanese accent, like, hello, honey.
That's really cute.
Yeah, it's super cute. So we've had to teach her how to be affectionate.
Because she would have been brought up by Asian parents.
Oh, absolutely. And I love my grandparents, but they weren't particularly affectionate either. And my little sister was the one who actually softened my parents. So she had to teach my parents how to give her a big hug, big cuddle. So hugs weren't really a thing, but my sister kind of was the one. My very sweet baby sister was the one who started teaching them how to be more loving and affectionate in the way that we needed.
Oh, I'm so glad. Now, where do your parents live now?
They're all in Tokyo now. So I'm here as a sole ranger in Australia.
And so you're happy here?
Yeah, I'm so happy here. Yeah.
That's good. You're a Sydney gal.
I am.
I'm really glad that you have come to Melbourne.
Oh, yeah. I'm always happy to come to Melbourne.
With me.
Yes.
Your injectables and all about beauty, skin beauty and all of that kind of thing. Is that a passion, obviously?
Yeah, and I love that I get to do it. It feels so naughty because you grow up thinking that kind of stuff's frivolous. You know, I wasn't allowed to wear makeup. My mum would get cross with me if I used to take her eyeshadow palette and experiment with different colours. You know, that was a naughty thing to do. You know, children were meant to do their homework. We were meant to do mathematics and, you know, go to lessons after class, you know, piano lessons, ballet lessons, all that sort of stuff. So to get to do beauty for a living just feels like such a treat. It's so naughty, and I have a naughty side to me, and I'm like, I love it.
Yeah, good.
And I just feels like, is this really a job? Because, you know, unlike hospital life where people don't really want to be there, now every day I go to work and people are happy to see me.
Yes,
it's such a
they're
change.
Coming in.
They're not sick. They're not injured.
No, they want to be there.
They want to be there. They're happy to see you and they're happy afterwards and they come back. And it just feels like going to work with girlfriends sometimes because
there's talking and relating and connecting.
Yes, and a lot of women who come, it's mainly women. I do have male patients as well, but I guess it reflects the cosmetic industry as a whole. Like most patients are women, like 90%, and most women are my age and they come to see me, and a lot of them have actually read my book, so I think they related to me on a personal level and felt like they could trust me before coming to see me, because there's so many clinics out there, and sometimes when you book in for an appointment you don't know who you're going to get.
That's right.
But they feel like they already know who they're going to get when they book in for an appointment. And a lot of them have also gone through burnout through their corporate jobs, so they felt like I'm already a relatable person. So they come and they chat to me about what's going on. I do their treatment, whatever it is, and then it just feels good, and we get to talk about things like skincare and makeup and things like that, and it's just fun, and it feels weird to be having fun
and getting paid for it.
Yeah, it's like you grow up thinking you have to work hard, and it's such a Japanese cultural thing. You have to work hard, and
work's not always fun.
In
that culture, whereas we're really like, do what you love, and that's a very American thing. Do what you love, do what you love, don't do it,
and then you never work a day in your life, right?
Exactly.
That idea. And now that I'm subscribing to that, it just feels like I'm making some sort of like
well, you've got imposter syndrome, haven't you?
A little bit of that. I'm like, am I allowed to do this?
Am I going to get caught out soon? Am I going to get told to go back to my really hard, awful job that put me in a mental health facility?
In a river of my own poo.
Make me shit myself.
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible that some people don't do what you did?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people would have kept going because they don't know that you can leave.
And what's the suicide rates?
It's high in medicine.
Because that's your other option, isn't it?
High. Almost everyone I know has a colleague who has either been really, really mentally unwell or has taken their own lives. Yes. And it happens every year. And the rate of mental illness is really high in medicine. And I find that so, so sad because...
Yeah, me too.
We're meant to help other people, but we can't help ourselves. Yeah. And I just think...
Or each other. Yeah, and it's really sad. As a patient, it's so incredibly sad to know that your doctor is suffering in any way when you are depending on them to help you.
Yeah.
You feel like, should I rein it in a bit? Or, you want to soften it for them knowing these kind of things. But I think it's really important that the public know that doctors... are going through a lot as well.
And we're vulnerable too because we're
human. But that also helps
Yeah.
with your treatment, because a doctor can be going through what you're going through, and they can see it's. I think it's happening a lot in female reproductive systems, women's reproduction, that has been so ignored for such a long time that we now have a lot of women in the industry who have been through the same thing, which is, like we were saying before, the empathy. It shouldn't have to come to the point where you've got endometriosis that it becomes a passion for you. That ends up being the medicine that you've chosen because, or you've had someone in your family have reproductive problems, and so you've ended up going into that field, even though you were already in medicine but you hadn't chosen.
Yeah, it's kind of like Scott Morrison saying, like, oh, now that I've spoken to my Jenny and my girls, now I can empathize. It's kind of like...
Yeah.
You should have listened in
Half
the first
the country is your wife and your daughters. So.
That's the same sort of concept where people just cannot understand women because they choose not to, really.
Yeah.
It's just so much medical misogyny.
Yes.
And, you mentioned the thing about, female reproductive organs, and that is often something that is kind of undertreated in emergency department. And there have been so many studies that show that women who come in with pain don't get as much pain relief as male patients. So women's experience of pain is often ignored.
Yes.
And I'm sure part of that has to do with misogyny. Like, I don't understand lady pain or whatever.
Yep.
Male doctor doesn't get it.
And also, there's just a culture of suck it up because that's what women have to go through.
Yeah.
There was a woman I was watching on TikTok and she was talking about her husband's friend who told her he was having his testicles ultrasounded. And he was like, but what I'm really frightened about is the local that they have to give me. Right. She said, what for? He goes, I don't think you understand how sensitive testicles are. She goes, you're getting them ultrasound, like you're getting an ultrasound on them? He was like, I don't think you get the pain that we go through. So she started to explain to him what a pap smear involved, what having a marine or a clay, having something like that put in without any pain relief at all. And
I've had a marina put in with nothing.
That is just unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
That and I put these kind of things up on my stories whenever they present themselves for me. That the fact that it's just a given that we are going to have period pain, endo pain, any kind of pain, pap smears, as a scraping of our cervix, having a biopsy taken without any pain relief, that we don't have nerve endings up there, or it's just such a given that we just suck it up. And I'm glad that this is changing because we're talking about it. Yes. We're talking about it so much more, but there is only empathy from men who have testicles that might get hurt, or they might get kicked in the crutch, and then oh my God, you're the pain. It's like, or they see their wives give birth.
Yes.
Oh, I've got a whole new level of appreciation for you women now. I want to slap
and now the
people.
period pain stimulators and things. It's just like
I was talking to someone about, I think it was on the pod, was it, that we were saying every time you date someone you should give them the stimulator when you're on your first date and just see what their level of empathy and sympathy is and how much they can handle. And if they don't believe this is what you really do go through, red flag. Wouldn't it be wonderful?
So many red flags.
I'd just love to watch those dates. That would be a TV show.
Right.
I could
New
watch
concept.
Happily every single day.
I think we'll lose half the population for the viewership, but
we certainly would. But that's okay too. There's different horses for different courses.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to wrap this up with you, but I want to know what your advice is.
Oh, okay.
What is your go-to number one, can't live without, must have beauty item?
Oh, okay. So I'm not going to use a product, but I'm going to talk about ingredients.
Okay, please. Because that's what it's all about.
That's what it's
Active
all
ingredient.
about. And the thing is, brands depend on things like, whether you like fragrance-free or texture and all of those. Even with sunscreen, right?
That's right.
You even with sunscreen, you use the one that you're going to use. The best sunscreen is the one that you're going to use. Same sort of idea with any sort of beauty product, right? But I think niacinamide is my favourite ingredient because it covers so many different things. Good
like
for pores.
What? Please tell me.
Well, good for pores, good for pigmentation. It's also great for the skin barrier. So if you're a bit like me and like to do all sorts of treatments on your face, it's good to protect your skin barrier. So it's one of those ingredients that does lots of things. It's the hardest work.
And you can use it throughout your whole adult life?
Yeah. Yep.
And how does it come? What form does it come in?
Serums, creams, even in some cleansers will have them. So I generally say you don't need to buy anything too expensive when it comes to cleansers and moisturizers and things. But the ones that are worth looking into are vitamin C and vitamin A, the retinols, because the chemical form and how it's packaged is really important, because vitamin C and retinoids, they can break down in sunlight. So how it's packaged is actually really important. So other things, sometimes you're paying too much because it's for a brand, So I generally like to look at products based on what's in it. Yes. So what ingredient is in it rather
because they'll often say the percentage, won't they?
Yes. But not all of them do.
No.
So I like brands that tell me exactly
the ones that do are the ones
percentage.
That I use.
Yes, I'm going to get. Totally.
Yes. Yeah. So because your C is in the morning and your A is at night.
Yes.
That's what I do know because
perfect.
your C can go in the sun, but your A, no, don't put that in the sun. Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me?
Niacinamide? Yeah.
Niacinamide. Yeah. When would you apply that?
Day and night.
Day and night.
Yeah. So I'll normally cleanse, exfoliate, and then put my niacinamide and any other serums, then moisturize and then sunscreen in the morning. The general rule is to go by consistency. So you put the thin consistency stuff on and then the thick stuff. Otherwise, it's not going to...
Yes. Sunscreen always last.
Always, yeah. And before makeup.
And what do you think of zinc?
I like zinc.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, as a sunscreen?
Yeah.
And what's the other... If you don't have zinc in your sunscreen, what's your other ingredient?
So there's both like chemical and physical sunscreens, and there's evidence that both of them work well.
Okay.
So, yeah, like I was saying before, the best sunscreen is the one you're going to use.
Okay.
So pick your SPF 50 and don't forget to reapply.
That was a great ending, actually.
We're ending with a PSA, public health.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming
Pleasure.
on. I really, really, really feel so honoured that I could have your advice, your wealth of knowledge and your emotional capacity. And just there's so much about you that I really love. And I'm really glad that I know you.
Yeah, me too.
I'm really glad you exist.
All the best friendships come from Instagram.
Effing oath they do.
Because people come up on your algorithm because it's what you're interested in already, right? So it's almost like pre-screened who you're going to like.
It is. It's like Tinder for friendships.
It is a bit, yeah.
Because it's great.
But no fish pics.
No fish pics, no car pics.
Yeah.
But
I don't even have a car.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy you a little Matchbox one day, then you're going to have a car. If you liked this episode, please rate, review, subscribe. Email me, DM me, emails 2girls@novapodcast.com.au. You can DM me, Yvie_Jones. Yumiko, please give me one of your profiles because you have 18,000 on Instagram.
Yes.
Which one would you like people to follow?
Well, Yvie just discovered my plant Instagram.
Yes.
My plant babies today. But the main one I use is my my kind of personal one, which is Mind Body Miko, which is random posts of whatever I like.
And your book, Emotional Female, is still out now. Anyone can buy it. Hard copy, soft copy, red copy, blue copy, any copy, digital copy, copy. Thank you again for coming in. I will be in your ear holes next Tuesday. Please just be nice to people.